She had him declared dead in 6 months. Married his best friend in under a year. The insurance paid out $1.5 million. But there's one thing she forgot. Alligators don't eat when the water is freezing. The morning of December 16, 2000, began like any other hunting day for Mike Williams. A successful real estate executive, a devoted husband, and a doting father to his young daughter Ansley, Mike lived a life many would envy. He and his wife Denise had been sweethearts since the 9th grade, attending a private Christian school together where he played football and she cheered from the sidelines. Their 6th wedding anniversary promised a weekend getaway to a quiet bed and breakfast. But first, Mike wanted to hunt ducks on Lake Seminole. The frigid cold front tearing through Tallahassee did not deter him. He kissed Denise, promised to return by noon, and walked out the door with his shotgun. By early afternoon, Denise began watching the clock. Mike was never late. She dialed his cell phone once, twice, a dozen times. Each call went straight to voicemail. The weather had only worsened. Wind gusts ripped across the region. The temperature continued to drop. As darkness swallowed the sky, Denise made 2 panicked phone calls. First to her father, then to Brian Winchester, Mike's closest friend since childhood. The 3 of them drove to Lake Seminole with flashlights and heavy coats. The boat ramp was empty except for Mike's truck and trailer. No Mike, no boat. The freezing rain stung their faces as they called his name into the black water. Florida Fish and Wildlife Officer David Arnett arrived at sunrise. The scene immediately struck him as unusual. Mike's boat sat quietly in the shallows, completely intact. A full tank of gasoline suggested the motor had run for only minutes. The shotgun remained secured inside its padded case, which no experienced hunter would do while actively pursuing ducks. The decoys, still stacked together, had never been placed in the water. Everything pointed to a man who had launched his boat and then, for reasons unknown, never actually began hunting. Arnett treated the case as a missing boater, but deep down, he sensed something did not add up. The official explanation came quickly. Investigators theorized that Mike had stood up to relieve himself or adjust his gear, lost his balance, and tumbled into the icy water. His waders, designed to keep a hunter warm and dry, would have instantly filled with freezing lake water. The weight would have pulled him under within seconds. Drowning in such conditions would take only a few minutes. Then came the secondary theory. Lake Seminole hosted a large alligator population. The reptiles, investigators suggested, had consumed Mike's body entirely. No bones, no flesh, no scraps of clothing. A clean, tragic accident. The case seemed closed before it ever truly opened. Cheryl Williams refused to accept any of it. She had raised Mike. She knew his strengths. He was a seasoned outdoorsman who had hunted Lake Seminole for years. He knew how to handle a boat. He knew the dangers of cold water. But more importantly, Cheryl understood alligators. She had done her research. Alligators are cold-blooded reptiles. Their metabolism slows dramatically when water temperatures drop below 70 degrees. At 19 degrees, they enter a state close to hibernation. They do not hunt. They do not feed. They barely move. The idea that a congregation of alligators had somehow consumed her son completely, leaving no trace, was not just unlikely. It was biologically impossible. Then came the evidence that broke the case wide open. 6 months after Mike vanished, a fisherman pulled a pair of waders from the lake. They were Mike's size and brand, completely intact, no tears, no alligator damage. Days later, a hat surfaced near the boat ramp, then a hunting jacket with a perfectly legible license, finally a flashlight that still turned on. Each item had been submerged for half a year, yet none showed any sign of algae, moss, or deterioration. Investigators had dragged that section of the lake for 44 days straight. They had found nothing. Now, everything appeared at once. The conclusion became unavoidable. Someone had planted this evidence. The financial picture emerged slowly. 6 months before Mike's disappearance, Brian Winchester had written a $1.5 million life insurance policy on his best friend. Denise was the sole beneficiary. Brian sold insurance for a living. He knew exactly how to structure a policy. He knew the waiting periods. He knew what documentation would be required to claim the money. When Denise requested a death certificate after only 6 months, she bypassed Florida's standard 5-year waiting period for missing persons. The planted evidence convinced the judge. The death certificate was issued. The check was cut. Denise Williams became a wealthy widow, and her late husband's best friend became her constant companion. The relationship did not stay hidden for long. Within months of Mike's declaration of death, Denise and Brian married. Mike's brother Nick watched in disbelief as Brian moved into Mike's house, slept in Mike's bedroom, and helped raise Mike's daughter. Family friends began whispering about an affair that had started before Mike ever launched his boat that December morning. When Cheryl Williams demanded a criminal investigation, Denise responded with a threat delivered coldly and directly. If Cheryl continued asking questions, she would never see her granddaughter Ansley again. Cheryl had already lost her son. Now she faced losing the only piece of him still alive. She backed off. The silence lasted for years. 15 years passed. The money ran low. The marriage crumbled. Denise filed for divorce. Brian did not handle the news well. One evening, Denise walked to her car in a parking lot. She did not see Brian hiding in the back seat. He rose up with a gun, shoving the barrel into her ribs. He grabbed the steering wheel and screamed uncontrollably. He threatened to kill himself. Denise later described the terror in a courtroom, her voice shaking. Their teenage daughter wrote a letter to the judge, begging him to keep Brian behind bars. She said her mother was all she had left. Brian was convicted of kidnapping, but he never confessed to anything involving Mike. The case of Mike Williams remains officially unsolved. No one has ever been charged with his disappearance. Denise Williams has never been arrested, never been questioned under oath, and never returned a single dollar of the insurance money. She still lives in Florida. Cheryl Williams still has no body to bury. She has no grave to visit on anniversaries or birthdays. She has no answers. She speaks to Mike sometimes, asking the same questions that haunt her every waking moment. How did you die? Were you afraid? Was it quick? She says she has 2 choices: accept that her son is dead or hold on to hope that he is alive somewhere. Until someone proves otherwise, she chooses hope.